41 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. The throat of the Persian Gulf, warm, dark, and patient. At 3:22 in the morning, the surface temperature holds at 28 degrees Celsius, and the air above it sits heavy with humidity that fogs optical sensors and coats every exposed surface with a crystalline film of salt. To the north, 11 kilometers away, the lights of the Iranian coast mark a shoreline that has been watching this strait since before navies existed. USS Nitsa transits eastbound at 22 knots, running darkened radar in passive collection mode. She is not hiding. She's being careful. In the Strait of Hormuz, there's a difference. The crew has been at modified general quarters for 6 hours. The watchstanders in Combat Information Center are tracking Iranian coastal activity. 2 fast attack boat formations inside the 12-mile limit. A pair of C-band coastal radars active. The emission signature of a patrol aircraft circling above Bandar Abbas. All of it normal for this transit. The threat picture is outward. Toward the coast, toward the surface corridors, toward the sky. Nobody is looking down. The EM-52 has been on the floor of the strait for an undetermined number of days. Iranian mine-laying in the shipping lane bend is patient in a way that surface combatants cannot afford to be. The mine sits passive, no power draw, no electromagnetic emission, invisible to the Nitsa's detection sweep, which was calibrated for older contact and acoustic influence profiles. When the Nitsa's magnetic signature crosses the activation threshold, the mine's processor runs a 0.3-second confirmation. Target class confirmed. The rocket fires. The weapon rises through 28 meters of water in 1.9 seconds. The warhead detonates 4 meters below the keel, centered directly beneath the forward engine room. The crew experiences it as a vertical hammer blow. No warning, no preliminary. The ship lurches upward 3 feet and drops back into the sea. Every sailor not braced against a fixed surface goes airborne. The boatswain's mate in the forward passageway hits the overhead with his shoulder and does not immediately rise. Racks in the berthing spaces collapse at their bracket welds. A coffee mug on the officer of the deck's console becomes a projectile. The sound arrives a full second later. Not a sharp crack, but a resonant boom from everywhere simultaneously, the steel itself announcing what has happened to it. Then the alarms. Not one at a time. In layers, the general alarm. 5 short blasts on the ship's klaxon. The most recognizable sound in any navy. A sound that bypasses rational thought and goes directly to the emergency system of the human body. Behind it, within 6 seconds, fire alarm for the forward engine room. Flooding alarm for auxiliary machinery room 2. Electrical fault alarm for the forward main switchboard. And the gas turbine trip alarm for GTGs number 1 and number 2. Simultaneously, on top of each other, a wall of overlapping tones that the experienced crew parses in real time, while the newer sailors are still looking for something to hold on to. In the forward engine room, the shockwave has done what it was designed to do. Not breach the hull, but flex it. The keel deformation is millimeters, distributed across every pipe bracket and weld joint in the forward third. A 4-inch firemain riser fails at its bracket weld seam. A longitudinal crack 8 inches long at 90 pounds per square inch. The water that comes out is not a drip. It is a flat sheet, 250 gallons per minute into the space designed to protect the ship from exactly this scenario. Gas turbine generator number 1 trips on its vibration sensor 11 seconds after the detonation. GTG number 2 lasts 43 more seconds before saltwater contamination on the forward main electrical bus throws a fault that trips the breaker hard. The forward main switchboard loses power. In Combat Information Center, the SPY-1D radar stops mid-sweep. The 12 tactical displays go dark in sequence, starboard to port. The last one, the main tactical plot showing the Iranian coast, the Nitsa's position in the strait, and the 8 fast attack contacts the watch had been tracking. holds for a moment with the image burned into the phosphor, and then goes to black. The ship is not sinking. She has structural integrity. But in 54 seconds, she has gone from a fully operational guided missile destroyer to a vessel with one generator, no forward radar, an actively flooding machinery space, and 283 people fighting their ship by hand in the dark. In the Persian Gulf, at 3:22 in the morning, wounded is enough. Damage Control Central is a room the size of a commercial walk-in refrigerator, buried 3 decks below the waterline. Its walls are covered with laminated diagrams, valve location charts, status boards, and the annotated experience of every chief who has run DC drills in this hull for the past 8 years. Right now, those walls are being updated in real time. Grease pencil on white laminate, red markers appearing faster than the watch officer can annotate them. Red. Forward engine room. Flooding. Rate 200+ gallons per minute. Red. Forward main switchboard. Electrical fault. Cause, wet bus. Red. GTG number 1 offline. GTG number 2 offline. Ember. Auxiliary machinery room 2. Multiple joint seepage. Black. GTG number 3 operational. The only generator still alive. Carrying aft systems only, the chief engineer arrives at 3:24 a.m. He's been below deck since midnight. He knew what the sound was before the alarm started. He reads the board without speaking for 11 seconds. Diagnosis, not hesitation. The cascade is clear. Flooding in the forward engine room is the lead event. If the firemain rupture continues unchecked, the rising water will reach GTG number 3's cooling inlet in approximately 12 minutes, which trips the last generator. No GTG number 3 means total blackout. No power, no Aegis, no fire pumps. The chain from flooding to complete loss of fighting capability runs through a single thread. Stop the flooding, and the thread holds. He has 23 DC personnel. He has 3 simultaneous priorities that together require more than 23 people. He assigns 14 to the flooding in the forward engine room, led by himself. 6 to the forward switchboard team to clear the bus fault and restart GTG number 2. 3 to a topside damage survey. He keeps no reserve. He stood in DC Central with the status board in front of him. Red markers on 3 systems. 23 people. 3 problems that needed 30. He assigned 12 to the generator, 6 to the flooding, 3 to topside. Then he went to the flooding himself. Because the flooding was the thread, and if the thread broke, nothing else mattered. He chose the engine room over the switchboard. He chose stopping the cascade at its source over restoring power from above. He would not second-guess the decision, but he would think about it for a long time. The IRGCN Operations Center on Keshem Island had been monitoring the Nitsa since she entered the western approach at 1:50 a.m. Passive sensors only. They knew her course and speed. They had assessed a 40% probability of a successful mine detonation. At 3:22:31 a.m., the Nitsa's SPY-1D radar emissions dropped from active scan to near zero. Her speed fell, 22 knots, then 18, then 14. The acoustic signature of her propulsion plant shifted to a single turbine profile. The duty officer does not wait for confirmation. The order goes to the fast attack boat flotilla holding 12 kilometers to the northwest. 4 boats, 8 Noor C-802 anti-ship missiles, salvoed on the Nitsa's last confirmed position. Time of flight, 7 minutes and 40 seconds. The clock is running. The chief engineer drops through the access scuttle into the forward engine room. The emergency lighting has shifted to battery backup, red, flat, directionless. The space he has walked through 500 times is unrecognizable. The normal bass drone of operating turbines has been replaced by the sound of moving water bouncing off steel bulkheads. The water hits him at shin depth. It smells of hydraulic fluid and warm salt. The temperature has dropped from the normal 40-degree machinery space heat. The 30-degree Gulf water flooding in has created a fog layer at knee height, where warm air meets the cooler flood surface. The rupture sounds before it is visible. A high-pressure hiss beneath the lower register of the flooding. The chief engineer sweeps his battle lantern toward the starboard side of the generator space and finds the firemain riser. 4-inch chrome steel pipe. A longitudinal crack running 8 inches along a bracket weld. Water exiting in a flat horizontal sheet. 90 pounds per square inch. 250 gallons per minute. The assigned damage controlman reaches the pipe first. Battle lantern raised above the thigh-deep water. He pulls wooden plug number 3 from the DC kit. It doesn't fit. The rupture is a linear crack along a weld seam, not a puncture in the pipe wall. Conical wooden plugs are designed for circular holes. The plug reduces flow by 30%. The water is still winning. The machinist's mate behind him holds up the speed patch kit. Rubber sheet, C-clamps, turnbuckle harness. The right tool. The chief engineer reaches for it. The C-clamps are 3-inch. The firemain riser is 4-inch nominal. The clamps will not close around the pipe with the patch installed. The kit was assembled for a smaller variant and stored in an identical bag. Nobody caught it during inventory. 2 friction events. Wrong plug profile. Wrong clamp size. The water is at thigh depth and rising. The chief engineer does not look for a third option in the same direction. He turns the problem 90 degrees. He cannot seal the pipe from outside. He needs to cut the pressure at the source, the manual isolation valve for this firemain section, 40 feet aft on the catwalk above the bilge access. Closing it starves the rupture. The generator's cooling water access is also isolated. But the generator is already offline. The trade is not complicated. He moves toward the valve. The water reaches his waist before he is halfway there. The emergency red does not reach below the flood surface, below mid-shin. The space is total darkness, navigated by memory, and the feel of machinery housing under his hands. Generator housing to the right. Toolbox bracket to the left. The bilge ladder 4 steps ahead. The catwalk stands 4 rungs clear of the current flood level. He climbs it. The isolation valve has a 6-spoke handwheel and has been power operated for 17 years of service. It has never been turned by hand under service conditions. Residual hydraulic pressure in the actuator body and mineral deposit at the packing gland make it effectively frozen. The ship's 2-degree list to port means the chief must brace one boot against the catwalk railing to hold position. He puts both hands on the wheel and leans. Nothing. He adjusts stance to the full catwalk width and applies force in a rocking motion. Clockwise pressure, release, clockwise release. Using the spoke to work the packing gland loose before committing to a full turn. On the 4th cycle, the valve breaks free, half a turn. The sheet of water from the rupture below drops 60% in 2 seconds. Another half turn. A stream. One more. A drip. The bilge pump begins to win. The water level stabilizes. Will not rise further in this space. The chief engineer's forearms are shaking. He notes this as a fact and files it. The forward engine room is not repaired. It is contained. The difference between those 2 things right now is everything. Vampire, Vampire, Vampire. 8 inbound, bearing 270, range 29 miles. Time of flight, 4 minutes, 12 seconds. The electronic warfare operator's voice is flat. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. The NHTSA's only functional defensive weapon is the CIWS phalanx on the port mount. Independent power, 1,550 rounds of 20mm tungsten. Engagement range 1.5 kilometers. The engagement mathematics against 8 Noor missiles at 220 meters per second does not produce acceptable results. CIWS will stop some of them. It will not stop all of them. Aegis needs power. Aegis needs GTG number 2 restarted and the forward switchboard fault cleared. The switchboard team has been working for 7 minutes. The petty officer leading the team has cleared the contaminated bus fingers. Cleaned, dried, retorqued in a space designed for one person. In red emergency lighting, In the smell of burnt insulation, the fault is cleared. GTG number 2 is prepped for restart. The sound-powered phone rings. The chief engineer's voice, distorted by water in the cable run. Start it now. Don't wait for full prime. Start it now. The formal LMM2500 restart sequence requires a minimum 90-second fuel system prime before air start. This is not a recommendation. It is a written requirement. The machinist's mate knows this. 4 minutes have become 3 minutes and 40 seconds. He hits the air start at 3:30:51 a.m. 45 seconds of prime completed. The turbine turns over with mechanical reluctance. Hesitation in the first revolution, the turbine working against incomplete fuel pressure. First ignition attempt, no catch. A backfire through the inlet. Then silence, 2 seconds. Protocol says 10. He hits the button again. The LM2500 catches. The sound rises from a mechanical rumble through a mid-range whine into the high, steady howl of a gas turbine under its own power. The machinist's mate watches the frequency meter. 45 hertz, 49 hertz, 53 hertz. The 2MC. Missiles, range 14 miles, 2 minutes 3 seconds, 57 hertz, 59 hertz. His coveralls are soaked from the flooding response, 4 compartments aft. His hands are steady because he has decided they will be. 60.1 hertz. He closes the bus tiebreaker. The ventilation fans come on first. In the forward part of the ship, they have been silent for 9 minutes and 11 seconds. Their absence has been the most psychologically significant aspect of the blackout. Not the darkness, which emergency lighting addresses, but the silence of the fans, which a sailor learns to equate with the ship being alive. When the switchboard accepts load, the fans spin up with the sound of a long-held breath finally released, filling the passageways with moving air and the smell of a ship resuming operation. Then the lights shift. Red emergency to white standard, compartment by compartment, section by section. DC central transitions from flat crimson to sharp white, and the status board, more red and amber markers than any drill has ever placed on it, becomes fully legible. In CIC, Aegis begins its 89-second initialization. The SPY-1D self-diagnostic runs across all 4 array faces. The initialization bar advances 20%, 41%, 63%. EW operator. Vampires range 8 miles. CIWS acquiring. CIWS fires a 1.5-second burst at the lead. Noor at 1,420 meters. The missile disintegrates. Debris passes 60 meters to port. 1 down. Initialization, 78%. The second Noor has been flying a slightly offset track. CIWS reacquires at 1,100 meters and achieves a partial intercept. The seeker loses lock. The damaged missile impacts the water 30 meters to starboard, close enough that the explosion lifts the ship to port. No hull breach. The third missile is 900 meters out. CIWS fires. The debris from the intercept hits the mount directly. The barrel assembly deforms. The tracking radar housing is destroyed. CIWS is dead. The fourth Noor is at 600 meters. Initialization, 94%. The operations officer watches the range count. He cannot maneuver. He cannot shoot. He watches. Initialization, 100%. The SPY-1D comes online at 3:31:44 a.m. Full active scan. All 4 array faces energize simultaneously, sweeping 360 degrees at 4 megawatts. In 0.4 seconds, the radar acquires all 6 remaining missiles, classifies each, generates tracks, and passes fire control solutions to the combat computer. SM-2 leaves its VLS cell at 3:31:46 a.m. The fourth Noor is at 410 meters. Intercept at 380 meters. The expanding rod warhead shreds the Noor's airframe before the propellant ignites. Debris passes 40 meters to port. No impact. 5 missiles remain. 5 SM-2 intercepts over 41 seconds. Clean engagements at ranges between 4 miles and 1 mile. The EW operator at 3:32:27 a.m. Vampire, splash. All inbound, negative. Raid complete. On Kesham Island, the duty officer is looking at a display that shows USS Nitsa. Speed recovering, position holding, SPY-1D at full power active scan. His operations center had written the ship off 9 minutes and 22 seconds ago. He is looking at 4 megawatts of radar staring back at him. He does not understand how the ship fixed itself. He will not be given an explanation. USS Nitsa continued her transit at 18 knots. 1 primary shaft at 70% power. The mission continued. The accounting follows. GTG number 1 offline for 6 to 8 weeks of yard repair. Flood tide line marked at the 3-foot level on every surface in the forward engine room. CIWS phalanx mount destroyed. Terminal defense capability gone for the remainder of this deployment. 5 SM-2 missiles expended, 11 remaining. 4 sailors injured, 1 fractured clavicle, medically evacuated by helicopter at 5:45 a.m. 2 second-degree burns to hands and forearms, continued on watch following treatment. 1 concussion that went unreported for 40 minutes by the sailor himself. He was running the flooding response the entire time and did not notice his own condition until his watch section supervisor noticed it for him. The DC team that worked the flooding emerged at 5:10 a.m., looking like something had been done to them. The lead petty officer sat on the afterdeck for 6 minutes drinking water before he could make a coherent verbal report. Nobody commented. It was the cost of performance, filed under a category that does not appear in any damage control manual. DC locker inventory depleted. Both speed patches consumed. P250 suction line fouled. 4 SCBA bottles exhausted. Wooden plug inventory cleared. Emergency cable reel burned out from an incorrect gauge connection during the switchboard repair. Restocking at next logistics rendezvous. 46 hours away. If a second event occurs before then, the team goes in with less than they had last time. At 5:15 a.m., the chief engineer conducted his post-event walkthrough with a tape measure. He measured the distance from the rupture point to the main electrical bus panel in the aft section of the forward engine room. The bus that, if contaminated, would have tripped GTG number 3 and put the ship into total blackout with 8 missiles inbound and no defensive capability. The crack ran 8 inches along the weld seam. The bus panel was 14 inches below the pipe, rooting at the lowest point of the failure. If the crack had propagated 12 additional inches, an extension within the physical capacity of the same shock event, achievable by a different hull geometry at the mine's detonation point, by a marginally lower bracket weld quality, by a slightly different angle of mine ascent. The firemain would have discharged directly onto the bus. Total blackout. No Aegis, no fire pumps, no defense. The chief engineer wrote the number in his maintenance log in his own handwriting with the date and time. He did not share it with his team. He closed the log. The ship transited the eastern strait at 18 knots. 1 degree list to starboard from residual bilge asymmetry, CIWS Mount Dark, and bent on the port side, SPY-1D radar, sweeping the full Persian Gulf at 4 megawatts. She looked like a ship that had won. She was also a ship that knew precisely how close winning and not winning actually are. 14 inches along a weld line, half a turn of a frozen valve in hip-deep water. The margin was always there. Just required someone to be in the water to find it. 1 EM-52 rocket-rising mine detonated beneath the keel. 3 compartments affected. 14 cracked pipe joint seals from shock propagation. 2 gas turbine generators offline simultaneously. 9 minutes and 11 seconds of forward electrical blackout. 8 inbound Noor anti-ship missiles in the follow-up salvo. 1 CIWS mount destroyed. 5 SM-2 missiles expended in terminal defense. 23 damage control personnel involved in the casualty response. 11 manual system overrides executed without primary power. 4 sailors injured, 1 medically evacuated. Ship status, operational. The yard teams who assessed the Nitsa 3 weeks later found 16 temporary repairs still holding in the forward engine room. 13 were textbook. 3 were improvised. A gate valve turned by body weight alone. The gas turbine started 45 seconds ahead of its prescribed prime sequence. A firemain section isolated using a procedure that did not exist in any manual, applied by a chief who had spent enough time inside the ship to know what the ship needed before the manual did. The procedure is written in offices. The ship is known in the bilge. In the dark, with the water rising, with the alarms overlapping and the red lighting turning everything the color of the emergency it is. The Nitsa's crew knew their ship. In 9 minutes and 11 seconds of darkness, in the narrowest point of the Persian Gulf, that knowledge was the thing that never failed.